Welcome to the Fertility Mind podcast. I am your host, Jessica Friesen, a certified fertility mindset coach, a sound healer, and an international best-selling author. My mission for this podcast is to give you weekly episodes where you hear my own success with IVF and how mindset and manifestation changed it all for me. You will also hear from my guests who share their success stories in the fertility world. I want you to know that you are not alone. Even when things feel tough and when things feel like they aren't going your way, the tools and techniques you will get in this podcast, I know can change everything for you too. So thanks for being here with me today, and let's dive in. Hello and welcome back. I'm excited to have you here today, and I've got a special guest speaker, Jessica West. She is one of the co-authors in our book, Manifesting with Purpose, Aligning to Your Soul's Desires. And she's going to explain a lot about what manifesting and mindset means to her. So I bid you hello, Jessica, and give yourself an introduction.
Well, hello, Jessica. Thank you so much for having me on today. I'm really so honored. I know you came on my podcast and did an interview there. So it's just so great to be here and, share myself with your audience too and talk more about our book. So a little bit about myself. I live in Northern Ontario. I was born and raised here. I'm a creative entrepreneur. I'm an author, co-authored our book, Manifesting with Purpose together, a podcast host. In 2015, I was in a serious motor vehicle accident and I wasn't expected to survive. And then, of course, I did. And then I was placed with a bunch of limitations at what I could achieve and what I can do in my life moving forward. But sure enough, a lot of what I was told, I did not accept that as truth for me. Like there was no way. And so in a matter of years, I had really turned that around. Kind of overcame all of these limitations. I went back to school. I finished my bachelor's degree, and then I worked full time, which was something that I was told that I would never be able to do again. Started a business and launched on this journey, and that's really what got me interested in mindset manifestation. And I really wanted to learn more about myself. So it's kind of that moment that got me into this entire journey where now I'm feeling like having that experience and really it just gave me such a better understanding, I guess, like for my life of just like my understanding of what this life experience is and like this one shot really. And so I'm really like determined to make the most of it. And I want to help others make this one life worth living also. And so I really want to help empower others so that they can achieve whatever it is that they want, despite, whatever prognosis or whatever kind of life circumstance they might be facing.
I think that's incredible. And I think for me, as someone that has joined the mindset manifestation world, we've all joined it for different reasons. And I think it's so important for listeners to know that you really can apply it to every area of your life, no matter, like what you said, no matter your circumstances, no matter what's going on around you. It's just if you have the will, you can absolutely do it. So would you explain the chapters that you wrote in our book and what they meant to you?
Yeah, absolutely. So my whole experience really got me interested in the self, right? My self-discovery, really learning about the power that I hold within myself. And we each hold this within ourselves, right? Like we're a universe in our own being. We're perceiving our own version of reality. And so when I talk about, because I like to talk about the beliefs and perception and everything. And I know some people are like, well, wait a second, perception isn't reality. No, okay, it's not the general reality, but it's your reality. And you're creating your reality. You're creating your experience. And my near-death experience, being in the car accident, really got me to pay attention to that. And so that's what I share about in my first chapter. So chapter 1 is your inherent self-worth. And I go into my personal experience of my injuries and how I really started to build my sense of self-worth, because we're all worthy. But because the way that, maybe society is, or the way that we were raised, and all of these limiting beliefs that we've accepted as truth for us, a lot of us don't seem to be able to connect with that sense of worth anymore. And I really believe that you cannot experience anything if you don't feel like you're worthy for it. So, when I think about my recovery, for example, and I wasn't expected to recover the way that I did. And some people don't. But I see it as like a sense of self-worth. And I had to constantly like hone in and ask myself, like, do I feel worthy of a recovery? And if I feel worthy, then that must mean that I believe that it's possible for me. And that is why it is happening for me, because what we believe to be true for ourselves is what is going to be true in our world and our version of reality. And so the self-worth chapter really dives into that and some of the aha moments that I had along my recovery journey. And I really hope that it's going to help the reader build that sense of self-worth, to know that you're worthy of anything that you desire. And even I mentioned in there that because everything that we are experiencing, it's all coming through us and our five senses, and even our intuition, like before we project our definitions and qualifications of that thing. So everything's coming through us. And so even if we see someone that has achieved the success that we want, or has achieved, whatever goal that we're going after, the fact that we are able to see that and identify that means that it has to be present within us. And so there's no reason to feel, any kind of jealousy or annoyed of someone else's success, because it's present within you. And that means that it can be expressed by you. And so that's the whole intent for the self-worth chapter. And, Jess, at the end of every chapter, we have a chapter and practice period where we give questions, journal prompts. And so a lot of the questions in there are really going to allow the reader to really question their beliefs, and where did these beliefs come from? And is this true for me? And why do I believe that? And can I change that? So that's chapter 1, the self-worth. The second chapter that I wrote is creating your desired self. And I really love this one, because you can really create the version of you at that end result. And so when you identify the goal that you want, you have to ask yourself, who would I be having achieved that? And you can create that right now. You can be that, because everything is energy based. And so if we think about that, like attracts like energy. And so if you want positive experiences, but you're a very negative person, the positivity can't reach you. And even if it does, you're not going to be looking at the world through those lenses. And so you're not even going to be able to notice it. And so everything that you want needs to stem from yourself, needs to come from within first. And so that chapter, we start to develop self-awareness. And once you have that self-awareness, like where you're coming from. Well, now you get to decide, how do I want to feel? And how can I rewrite my self-image script? How can I really begin to internalize the version of myself that I want to be? And how can I start to be that now? Because again, everything is energy. And so you need to match with what you want before it can ever come to you. I've heard one of my mentors one time said something, and I love it. I thought it was so good. And she said, the only reason you don't have what you want right now is because you don't truly believe it. Because once you 100% believe it without a doubt, and you've released all resistance to it, you're it. Like, it's all energy. I think life is much more lucid than we tend to think that it is, because, we see this 3D reality and all these physical beings and physical things, but it's actually all energy based. And what you believe is what it's going to be. And so, I see it as just always like tweaking the belief. And how can I get better? How can I get better? Because as soon as you get that belief concrete, it's yours. And so that's what my chapters are all about. And I'm like super passionate about, becoming the version that you want to be.
I think that's incredible. And what amazes me is that even though, so throughout our book, we very much give you how to start manifesting your like a more purposeful life. It's your roadmap. But each one of us is so passionate about our topics because it's something that was a pivotal moment in our journey that changed something for us so that we could start transforming our lives. So for anyone that's not, or just like not in the manifestation world, or just kind of learning about it, what got you into it? Was there a certain book, or was it like just reading help, like self-help books? What kind of got you into the realm of, besides like your motor vehicle accident, like was there a specific something that like just clicked for you, like I want to know more about this?
You know what? For me, it wasn't actually ever a specific moment like that. Like I'm thinking of my whole journey. So, well, actually, no, I guess, and it seems weird, and it seems like what is the relation to that at all? But I think my whole world started to change when I adopted a plant-based diet. And I share that a little bit in the book too. Like that's when I really started to develop some self-awareness. And so I had completely switched my diet. And that whole change in self really, I feel like got me thinking in a different way. I started to be interested in new things. It's that kind of moment that really stemmed me to have an interest in energy work. And I got my Reiki practitioner certifications. And then that's when the motor vehicle accident happened. And I believe I wouldn't have had the recovery that I did had I not started that personal work beforehand. Because even once the experience happened, to me, I already kind of understood that everything is energy. We're here for an experience. And then that just reinforced everything. So I kind of looked at it as like, wow, this is a once in a lifetime experience. And so I better relish every moment of this, good or bad, because it's never going to come around again. And then just throughout my recovery, I always wanted to continue with that because you never really stop. Once you start learning about yourself and, oh my gosh, you're just infinite, the learning never stops. And so even during my recovery, I kept wanting to learn more. And so I had purchased this program. It's called, oh my gosh, and The Abundant Factor. And on that, have you seen that movie before?
I have not.
Okay. There's so many amazing people in there. So it's short little interview clips. So that's where I first heard of Bob Proctor. I think Sonia Ricotti was in there. There's Lewis Howes, Joe Dispenza was in there. Just a bunch of incredible people. And they were all like sharing kind of their teachings. And I remember hearing Bob and you're just like, oh, this old guy is pretty smart. I don't know who he is, but I like what he's saying. And then that was just that. I just allowed it to be like that. Honestly. And then I was on Facebook one day and I saw a mutual connection, and her job was working for Bob Proctor. She was a Bob Proctor consultant. And then I was like, oh, that's so interesting. That's the old man. So then I looked more into it. And yeah, sure enough. So I reached out and she's like, oh my gosh, I have this program, Thinking into Results. I think you'd love it. And I said, yeah, sure. Why not? Because once you start to learn more about yourself, like I said, it never stops. So then I just kind of I just wanted to get everything. So I was like, yeah, I'll invest in that program. And then once I was done, then I was like, okay, what else? Oh, and then I found Kathleen. So yeah, I'll invest in this program. And it just continuously progresses like that. So sorry, to go back to the original question, there wasn't like a huge pivotal moment for me, but it was more of just like an allowing myself to go where I felt right, where it felt good to me. And it just kind of all unfolded itself like that.
I think that's amazing because I know personally for me, and I never really understood what law of attraction was. And then I was in an MLM business years ago, and everyone kept talking about personal development, always reading all these books. And I was always reading them and I never really connected. And I just thought like, oh, this sounds amazing. And I think it connects because subliminally I was telling myself like I wasn't going to have this life. Like I read like the 4-year career, I read like flip flop CEO, like all these different things. And I was like, oh, well, it's worked for you, but I don't think it's going to work for me. And then I just started seeing like people were talking about like The Secret, The Power by Rhonda Byrne. I was like, okay, well, I'll listen to this. But that just hit me different. And I think it's because those ones I chose to listen to audio. So the author was talking to me and I could hear their tone. And I was like, oh, this is interesting. And then my first mentor, she got me into thinking into results as well. But I had literally seen her life transforming. And I was like, what is she doing? Like her business is like booming, but her personality is so different. So that's what got me excited into being like, what are you doing? Because I know a lot of things were going on in my life personally that I was not in a place that I wanted to be. And I was like, life has to be more. And I encourage listeners to really think about that question. Like, if you're not living your best life, ask yourself, what do you want to do? And because there's a feeling like when you keep having this feeling of like, there has to be more, there really is more. And I think, like you're saying, like when you allow these things start to show up, you start to find these connections and how you can get into communities or programs and things like that. And yeah, so there was one thing I've started like diving into a bit more of the spirituality realm right now. And the lady that I'm listening to right now, she really talks about everything is a vibration away, a thought away, a feeling away. And she's like, you have to really connect with what you want, feel it, and start to believe that you can have it, which is very much in alignment what we talk about in our book too. Like, especially your chapters, like you really say, like, what is it that I want? And start asking yourself, like your questions and thinking like, now this is the desired self that I want to become. And so how do I become that? And, you know, she talks about vibrational match. And I know Kathleen talks about vibrational match and things like that. And I just think it's amazing. A quote that my first mentor told me, like she still says it to this day. She's like, you can never outperform your self-image. And I always used to ask myself, like, what does that really mean? And when I was reading your chapters, I was like, Jessica lays this out beautifully. Like she's really telling you like what it means. So if you don't have this like great self-image or you don't believe that you're worthy of having something, you won't have it. You won't attract it. And you might attract it for a second, but you know, your paradigms or your ego or things set in and be like, you reason with why you can't have it. So, how are you using manifestation now? Like, is there anything specific that you're working for in like that you're really excited about? So you're done healing. You're now this like amazing entrepreneur. So what do you do now with manifestations? Like, what's the kind of next thing for you?
Yeah, for sure. Great question. Before I want to get into it, you just made me think of one of the questions that I have in, I believe it's the self-worth chapter. And one of the questions in there, in the chapter in practice, I say, what other than your own thoughts has you convinced that you are not enough? And it's kind of like a rounded, like there is no answer to that. Like there's nothing because everything is our thoughts. If there was no thought about it, there would be no awareness about it. And so I really just want to like make that obvious that like the only thing in our way is our thoughts about it. Some people where they, a roadblock, they could see it as an opportunity or they could see it as a game over, let's go home. But like, why is it that two people could see something, the same thing, a different way? It all has to do with our thoughts. And so I really, really want to make that point come across that because we're creating our life. This is our one shot and we are creating it. And when I think about it, it makes me so emotional because it would really be such a shame for us to live this life and not know the power that we have. Okay. So to go to your question, what am I manifesting right now? Super excited, really, and I'm going to share a story for this too, if that's okay, because, as you know, I mean, we were both in the same, coaching program together and, and every coach that I had talked to or like fellow coach when we were doing our coachings and everything, I always had such a hard time with the business that I had. So, I mean, I still have it, a kombucha business, but I scaled it to get commercial. We were in stores and everything. But it never really felt right. And what I was doing with the program. And so really, okay, back. So the reason why I wanted to start the business, right? I always felt like I wanted to share what I had learned, like through my accident and my journey. I always felt like I had something to share, but I didn't feel worthy to share it yet. So I thought, okay, I mean, who's going to want to listen to me? So maybe I need to create something so that I'm worthy of being listened to. So then came the business. This is going to be great. I'm going to create this business. I'm going to donate with this business. And people are going to be like, oh, like we really want to hear the story of this business. And oh my gosh, this is everything that she has been through to create that. If it's possible for her, maybe it's possible for me. But as I continued to learn about myself, started to learn more about my own self-worth and started to really, really believe in it, that I started to realize, hang on a second, I don't need a business to tell me that I'm worthy of being heard. I don't need a business to share my story. I could start sharing it right now. And so I'm telling that story because it's been a real struggle for about a year and a half now, because I was toiling with it, not really feeling interested and feeling like it was taking time away from me sharing my truth. But because I was so enveloped in it, I almost didn't know what to share about my truth. And so fast forward, I am in the process of discontinuing the line. I had made the announcement 2 weeks ago, like the kombucha available in the stores right now are going to be discontinued by the end of the month. And I am really closing that commercial aspect, but still doing what I love for kombucha and everything. And I'm going to be teaching people how to do it themselves at home, the creation, which is what I love. I've always loved the creativity. But I'm ending that and I'm going more into what I really feel called to do, which is share this truth. And I'm doing that via podcasting, via the book. I'm writing articles with other people also. And having done that just this week, so I made that announcement yesterday, or last week, sorry. Just this week, I had 3 people approach me to come speak at their events. And so this is what it is. Like, this is the manifesting, like just going with what feels right. Because I was in so much resistance that whole time, being like, oh, well, I started this, I need to continue it now. And what are people going to think after that? And oh, maybe if I do this, then I'm not worthy. But just allowing and going with what feels good. And so it's just amazing. So now I'm actually going to be doing what it is that I feel called to do. And I feel nervous about it. Some of these speaking opportunities, I'm like, oh my gosh, really? Is this it? Is it this? I have to say yes now. But that's how it is, right? And so I think I'm just following what feels good. And I'm holding the image of who I want to be on the screen in my mind. And so, I've been holding that I want to share my truth with people. I want to be able to speak. I want to be able to share on my podcast. I want to be able to present my book, and all of these opportunities are coming. And so I'm holding that, but I'm just going towards what feels good, and everything is coming in alignment from that state.
Thank you for sharing that. I think it's incredibly powerful, because I know some people won't talk about like self-worth or insecurities or things like that. And I think it's really important to be in tune the way you're being in tune. And some people would ride out like, well, I've started this business, I've invested in this, like I have to just keep going. But you're really listening to your intuition. You're really listening to your self-worth and saying like, hey, like I love this business, but it's not serving me where I want to go. And I can move my business to where I want to go. And I think that's incredible, because self-worth is a huge thing. Blessing and releasing, I think the whole book is a huge thing. And it makes me think about like when we said we were going to write this book, and I was like, this is going to be cool. Like we're writing a book. I never really thought much more else about it. I was just like, I'm going to write a book. This is really fun. It's something I can say I've done. Like just check it off like the bucket list. And having interviews, and I'm going to be on TV in 2 weeks, next week, the 27th anyway.
Which is so amazing.
I'm so nervous, but I actually had a moment with my husband. I'm like, is this going to be my life now? And he's like, well, what do you want? And I was like, I have to really think about this, because I was just thinking about my own things that I was going through. And I went through things like as soon as like our book was released on the release date, I felt really odd the whole day. And my husband's like, you should be so excited. I'm like, I am, but people are going to read my words. And he's like, yeah, that's the point of writing a book. I'm like, I know, but I'm like, oh my gosh. And then like, it just really hit me. I was like, people get to hear my words. I get to share my story. I get to help people on a very different level because I've never been a salesy person. I do not like, and I think that's why MLM never worked for me because I was just like, have some products. Okay, see you. Like I was never like, would you like to buy something? I'm not that salesy person. I like things to happen very organically. That is just me. I'm working on that part. But I think it's amazing that when you really connect with what you want, how things align and how you can say, you know what? Yeah, I can move my business here, or this can become your life. Things really can start really flowing for you and align when you align with your self-worth, what you want, and, you know, do all the tools that we lay out in the book for you, because I think it's so important. I think people just don't think that it's possible for them, or they hear a prognosis or a diagnosis, whether you're, you know, it's a traumatic injury or a brain injury, fertility, just being raised in a certain environment that you have to work so hard and save your money and you shouldn't want more than like, you know, this little box that you're put in. And I think it's just, I love that our book is told through 4 different stories, but we all have the same tools and techniques that we use, and we've all transformed our lives in different ways. And I'm excited for our listeners to read the book. I'm excited for any reader to read our book because I think it's incredibly powerful. And I like how you've also mentioned, like, we're still evolving. We're always evolving, how we want to keep growing, because once you know something, it's okay to still want to keep growing and wanting more, because once you hit something, it's good to be there and love it and relish it, but it's also okay to keep growing because we are meant to have this amazing life. And I know I grew up in a childhood where, like, I had a very good childhood, but we didn't have a lot of money and we were always just live within your means. You're going to work really hard, you know, do these things. And I just always thought like there's got to be like this amazing life because I'm watching people have this amazing life. Why can't I have this too? And I thought, well, you know, some people can because they're just lucky. And that was a word that I carried with me is like, oh, they're just lucky that, oh, they came from money or their parents got really good jobs and that's why they have all of these things. And you're right when you say like it is all within us. There's nothing different about me than you that, you know, like you had something that I didn't. We all have a will. We all have a drive. We all have dreams. And the only difference is that we've just connected with, we really want to start living our life now. We don't want to just, like you said, it's one shot. If you've got one life to live, why are we living it in a place? Because fear takes over. Fear kind of tells us like, no, you can't do this, or no, you can't do that. And I could go off on a tangent about this forever. But I think it's so important that you don't have to be wealthy to start a business. You don't have to be, you know, no matter where you are in whatever it is that you want to do, when you really connect with what means something to you, you can start to develop it and things will align for you. It doesn't mean contrast is not going to show up, but it also, the contrast is allowing you to work through and say, like, I'm actually going to guide you to the right path. And even though sometimes it doesn't feel that way, it actually guides you to the right path. So I think I love that you shared about you started this kombucha business because you wanted people to hear your story. And then you realized, hey, you know what? I'm actually pretty incredible. And I don't have to do it this way for people to hear my story, because the true people that are going to hear your story are going to hear it. And that's the people you're going to have your impact with. And that's the beautiful part, because I hear this word quite often, you're not someone's request. And I've really tried to like understand what that means. And I really started to understand like the people that are meant to hear your message are going to hear your message, and those are the ones that impact. People that don't want to hear your message, you weren't their request. They didn't want to hear it, and that's okay. And I think people need to understand that part too, Because I know when I heard things like that, or like I get excited to share mindset and manifestation, and some people are like, that's cool. I'm glad it worked for you. But, people have put me sometimes in a box like, oh, well, you were a stay-at-home mom, so you had like all the time in the world to do this. I'm thinking, I really don't. But I chose to align with something. And I used to internalize those feelings of like, no one wanted to hear what I had to say. Like maybe it's just me. Maybe I just, I don't present myself as smart enough. Like it was all self-worth. It was just that peace. And, now I find myself willing to share things more openly. And if someone's like, okay, that's cool, I'm just like, it wasn't their request. That's okay. And that definitely took a lot of work. And I've gone off on a little tangent, so I apologize. Is there anything else that you want to share with our listeners today?
Sorry, Jess, I just want to go back to what you were just saying because it really triggered me. So the thought of like, you are not someone's request.
Mm-hmm.
But if we're in an attraction-based universe, I kind of believe like, are we not always someone's request? We're going to be in their awareness because we're their requests. And if they don't want to hear what we have to say, that's fine. Like we're always just giving someone feedback. Whatever people are seeing, they're getting feedback. And even if they're listening and they're like, that's okay. Well, that didn't happen to me. That's your thing. That's still feedback to them. Like they can start reflecting on, well, wait, where is this resistance coming from? So in a sense, could we not have been delivered to them to help them recognize the limitations that they're placing on themselves? So are we not we are coming into your life, no matter how we're showing up and no matter how you're interpreting it, but it is an active request from you, because if it wasn't on a subconscious level, you would not be made aware of it regardless. And so I feel like everything that you get in life is always just giving feedback of where you are. And even when it comes to looking at like, for example, when you were told like, oh, well, it's easy for you to say, in your situation, whatever. I hate projections like that because we don't know what's going on in someone else's life, right? But it's even the same thing when we look at people, we say, oh, they're successful because they were born into it. Well, what is success? Are we only looking at financial terms? Because like, how do they actually feel? And if you have all the money in the world, but you're not actually happy, are you successful? And like, how can we say that? We're not in the person's thoughts. We're not in their minds. We don't actually know how it is that they're feeling. But when we say that, we're just projecting our beliefs onto the people. And so it's so interesting that the way we feel about life, it's always giving us feedback that we can then take on and reevaluate what's going on within ourselves. And so I guess that would be the one thing that I would like to mention is just like be aware of the way that you're interpreting everything around you, because it's all just giving you feedback on where your belief is at, and you can change that belief. And so if you're not happy with something, using the tools in our book, like the journal prompts and everything, you can start rewriting that belief so that you can actually start beginning to live the life that you want.
I think that's great. And I think it's, yeah, without like repeating everything that you said. And I know personally for me, like when I had to start using that terminology, I'd heard it and it bugged me the first time. I'm like, what do you mean? And one of the things that Kathleen was always saying, she's like, you know what? I can choose to believe what people are telling me or not believe. And that resonated with me because I just thought, you know what? We could all read the exact same book and all have a different feeling, a different idea of what this book is telling us. And I think that's why when I listen to audiobooks, I only choose the ones that are like narrated directly by the author, because I'm getting their message the way they're intending it to be said or heard, not just my own interpretation or tone or whatever that I get when you read. But when you're listening, you're like, okay, now I'm understanding. They're telling me what they mean. But personally for me, the weirdest thing that I went through, and I actually did an episode on blessing and releasing, when I started learning this material and I started changing my belief in myself, like that, I can be like a stay-at-home mom, but run a business from home. I can be powerful, and I do have a voice, because I was very much, I've never been a shy person, but I've always presented myself as a shy person. Like, I'll just sit in the room, I observe, and if people start having uncomfortable conversations where it's more negative or things and I don't want to join in, I'm just like, mm-hmm, mm-hmm. And people are like, gosh, like, you're really shy. I'm thinking, I'm not, though. I just don't talk a lot until you get me on a podcast and I don't shut up.
Yeah.
But I started feeling like, I think it's important for people to understand. I had to start telling myself that I wasn't someone's request, because I started getting very passionate about mindset and manifestation. And I did run into people when I started sharing my journey. People were like, well, it's easy for you to say because, you have the babies now when you went through IVF, whereas, they may still be on their fertility journey, and they're just like, you did it. I'm like, yes, I did, but I harnessed a very different belief once I understood what mindset and manifestation was. And back to what I was saying before, like, when I started changing my self-worth, started like really like doing the mirror work and standing in front of myself being like, I have a message to say and I'm really excited to say it. And I may get negative comments, and that's okay. And so that's where the word, like, I'm just not their request. And I like what you're saying, because you know what? I think we are everyone's request. They just may not be ready at that moment to hear it. Or it might be that spark, like you're saying, for them to be like, why is this bugging me so much? Or why, like, what is this person actually talking about? Maybe I'll Google, or maybe, I'll do something to go in that path. But I know personally, for my self-image at that moment, if people don't want to understand mindset or manifestation, I'd be like, I guess I'm just not their request right now, and that's okay. And I think, we attract our mentors, we attract the people we want to listen to, because we're ready at that stage and they start to appear for us. So that's just my little, tangent on it. But
Yeah.
thank
Well,
you. Go ahead.
I
No, go ahead.
appreciate that point of view. See, and everything is context, right? When you said it, I took it a different way and you took it a different way. So with you having explained it now, like, yeah, 100%, I agree. And if I think back to like my recovery or something, I'm not going to go and share with someone who may be having a more difficult time in their recovery and share everything that happened to me. Oh, enjoy the process. It's, one life. I'm not going to share that, because they don't want that. That's not beneficial to them. So in that sense, yes, like blocking what you're going to say, because you have to be mindful of who you're speaking with. You don't want to purposely trigger negative emotions. And so in that sense, yeah, not everyone is your request for that information. But if anybody is going to come across this podcast, let's say, maybe they don't agree with what I'm saying, but it was a request because I'm in your awareness. And so you can look at, internalize whatever it is that you're feeling about this content, because it's giving you information and feedback on where you're at. And so, yeah. So, I mean, there's so many different interpretations for everything in life. And that's what's beautiful, right? We truly are creating our own version of reality based on the way that we perceive everything.
Yeah. And to add to that, like, as you start changing your self-worth, as you start evolving and start developing who you want to become, it's okay if you have awkward stages. Because I know, like, for me, when I started, like, my kids are in extracurriculars, and when I show up where I drop them off, I know those parents. And 5 years ago versus today, or even 6 months ago versus today, I'm a very different person. I see things differently. I now have tools and tricks, which, in 2019 is when I started studying thinking into results, and my world started changing, but I didn't show up necessarily the way I wanted to then, because I was so laser focused on my fertility journey. And that's all I applied it to, until I was like, hey, I have tools and tricks. I can apply this to every area of my life. And I really do want to start living this best life. I don't want to live in this box where people tell me I'm supposed to be, or categorize me, or things like that. I have an impact. We all have an impact, a legacy, if you will, to leave the mark. And, I can say, like, when I showed up at, like the places where I dropped my kids off, I felt really awkward for a while, because I was like, maybe I'll just still be this quiet person. And I thought, no, I want to be vibrant. If I'm going to show up on social media as this new version of me, I have to show up in my everyday life. And heck, yes, it was uncomfortable, but it's become so natural now. And yeah, I have some very interesting conversations with people that are just like, mindset doesn't work. Like, I'm sorry, I live in this. I'm like, but you're in your environment. What if you could go to your imagination? What if you could go to something else? Or simply ask yourself, is this thought serving me? Is it serving you to believe that it can work for someone else, but it can't work for you? And, I say to a lot of my clients, I'm like, I'm going to give you amnesia for a day. You're going to forget everything that just happened. And if you started life right now, you just woke up, you have whatever money you want to have, you have whatever, where would you be? What would you do? And how would that feel for you? Don't worry about the actual physical amount of money in your bank account. Don't worry about how people have perceived you yesterday because you could have been having a bad day. But how do you want to show up? And I think that's really important when you're kind of figuring your self-worth too, is like, if time, money, judgment, all of this was no object, how would you want to show up in your life? And what can you start doing right now, today, to get there? And yeah, you're going to hit some bumps along the road. And I can hear Kathleen in my head saying, but why do you want to believe that? But
Yeah.
the truth is like, it's okay to hit bumps in the road because, like you're saying, you're always getting like feedback of where you personally are in yourself and in your environment and how you can keep growing and expanding so that you can keep having this beautiful life, or you're one step closer to it versus just, waking up every day, doing the same old routine, getting yourself to the places or things that you have to do and just existing and not thriving, and asking yourself, like, why am I not thriving? And, uncovering all of those things. So, yeah, I feel like we could talk on this topic forever
We
because
really could.
I know we're both very passionate about, we just want to help people and we want people to know that these tools and these tricks are techniques, like, are available to everyone. And you just have to open your eyes a little bit more and stop holding the belief that you can't have this, or that you have to have so much money, or you have to have a certain social status or something to do the things that you want to do. So, yeah, I love your chapters. I love all the chapters, but I think it is important that we did start the book with self-worth, like really saying like, hey, where do I stand? Because if I don't think that I'm good enough to have these things, I don't think I'm necessarily going to go much further, because that belief is just still so present that I know it works for someone else, but it's not going to work for me. So thank you very much for those chapters. I think they're amazing. And for any listeners, Jessica was actually the one that we were part of a mastermind. So in our coaching community, they really encourage people to join like-minded people to create a mastermind so you can bounce ideas off, whether it's starting a business, writing a book, doing a podcast, whatever it is that you felt called to do. And we joined a mastermind, and it was actually Jessica in the mastermind that said, hey, do you guys want to write a book? And we're like, yes, we do. And so thank you for throwing that idea out there, because you never know where life is going to take you once you start on the path of, doing these things. I never imagined in my wildest dreams I'd be on TV. I never imagined, it was a thought that it'd be really cool to write a book one day. It was on that bucket list, but I had no real intentions on, doing it myself. And I thought someday. And then you mentioned it, and I was like, okay, that day is here. This is really cool. And that's where I really believe, like, the universe aligns you with the right people when you're ready for something. And when you start changing your beliefs, like, things can unfold in ways that you never imagined. And, your intuition starts to become stronger and things like that. And ideas just come to you that, you may never thought of before. So thank you. I could say thank you like 100 times, because I think it's really cool that that's something that you felt called to ask our mastermind. And I think it's awesome that the four of us are the ones that ended up ultimately putting the book together, and how we are all so passionate about the chapters that we wrote and how they impacted our life so well. So before we end this, is there anything else that you want to share with the listeners, or is there anything else that you want to add?
I think I would just add our bonus chapter too, because we did write a chapter all together about the power of mastermind. And in there, I highlighted too that, surrounding yourself with the right people, but it depends on two things. So first, you need to know what it is that you want. And then second, you need to make sure that the people that you hang around are supporting your want and are going to help you get there. And I feel like that's what happened with like us getting into our mastermind community. And it's like, we all had that thought already, right? I knew I wanted to write a book too. And like sharing it with everyone who just jumped on board right away. Like it was just so amazing, but you need to know where you want to go first. Right. And then look around and see like, okay, the people that are around me, are they supporting where I want to go? And if not, there are so many groups online, free groups and free, 3-day mastermind classes or things that you can just join in to start getting this information and start connecting with other like-minded people that can help bring you there. So I'm just so grateful for each and every one of you for writing this book together. And oh my gosh, it's just such an incredible journey. And I'm so looking forward, like you're going on TV and like just everything that this is going to bring for us. I'm so excited. And for all of the benefit that it's going to provide to people reading the book. It's really so powerful.
Mm-hmm. And I think to add to that with the community part, and all of us in our community believe, because we're all coaches in our own way, and we all have something different we want to coach and how we want to help. And I really believe that like there's enough for everyone out there, that there's no competition between us. And I think that because we've had questions like, they're like, like, is there competition? Like who's going to have what? I'm like, no, like we all have our own niche of who or how we want to help. We just all had this desire to want to help. And yes, the power of a mastermind is huge, because, you may in your inner circle, whether it's your friends, family, whoever, they may not understand mindset or manifestation, or they may not think what you're doing is right. And you can surround yourself with people. And there's a quote that it says like, you can't change people, but you can change people. So when you think about it, you can't change the people that you're with, and you shouldn't be trying to change people, but you can change the people that you're spending your time with. You can change, conversations that you have with them if you still want them in your life. And I don't mean like all of a sudden just start weaning people out of your life, but you can steer conversations now. Like, I don't want to vent every time I hang out with my friends or family. I want to talk about like really awesome things. And, you steer the conversation and things like that. And those are all things that I got from being part of a community, because I was surrounding myself with like-minded people. I was seeing these wins, which also boosted my confidence that if these people can do this, so can I, because the competition piece was gone. It was just, we are all here for a purpose, and how can we build each other up, throw out ideas at each other. And you've mentioned before, there's no negativity. We're just going to say, maybe try this, maybe try that. We're not going to be like, oh no, that doesn't work. It's just, oh, this is an idea that popped to me. Maybe that can work for you. And I recommend that anyone finds a community or a mastermind that, you can really just connect with other people. And it doesn't have to be like the four of us, our co-authors, we live at different parts. Like Jessica and I both live in Canada and live in Ontario, but we're like 8 hours away from each other, and we've only met over Zoom. And then our two other co-authors, Elizabeth and Lauren, they live in the States, and they each live in 2 different states. So that's the beautiful thing about social media, Zoom, how you can create so many things by just surrounding yourself with like-minded people. And it doesn't have to be your partner or your husband or, your friends. You can meet them online, and that's okay. So yeah, I guess I can keep going on tangents forever. But so thank you so much for being here with me today, Jess. It's been so awesome. And I really do love your chapters. I love how you really do talk about self-worth and just how you're evolving and things like that. You've shared some very beautiful things. And in the podcast notes, I will put all the links to Jessica if you want to connect with her and reach out to her about anything. And yeah, have an amazing day.
Thanks. You too. It was so great to be here.
If you found this helpful or know anyone that needs to hear this, please share. And don't forget to leave a review and subscribe. In love and gratitude, Jessica.